The jury assessed his punishment at confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life.
Belinda Temple was 8 months pregnant when she was murdered in her Katy home in January of 1999. David Temple was convicted of the murder in 2007 and sentenced to life, but it was overturned because his legal team successfully argued the original prosecutors in the case withheld evidence. Now, during the state's closing arguments, they kept saying David had not taken responsibility. And at the reading of the verdict, the attorneys say they were happy.
It was a quiet Monday afternoon in Katy, Texas, January 11th, 1999. Belinda Temple, a beloved high school teacher and soon-to-be mother of two, didn't show up to her afternoon staff meeting. Calls went unanswered. No one could reach her. According to her husband, David Temple, he had been out running errands with their 3-year-old son. When they returned home, something felt off. A back window had been shattered, drawers were pulled open, the bedroom door was locked. When police arrived, they found what looked like a break-in, but there were no signs that anything valuable had been taken. And then they opened the closet. Inside, they found Belinda lying on the floor. She had been shot in the back of the head with a 12-gauge shotgun at close range. Her unborn daughter died with her. The scene looked like a burglary gone wrong. But detectives weren't convinced, because what started as a tragic home invasion would become a 20-year battle for justice, twisting through love, lies, and betrayal. And it all started with what was hidden behind that closet door. Belinda Tracy Lucas was born on December 30th, 1968 in Nacogdoches, Texas. She came into the world just minutes apart from her twin sister, Brenda. The two were inseparable, bonded not just by blood, but by personality and presence. Growing up, Belinda had a reputation for being headstrong. She was confident, a little stubborn at times, and didn't shy away from speaking her mind. But she also had a deeply caring nature, especially when it came to her family. She was athletic and disciplined, traits that followed her into young adulthood. In college, she taught aerobics classes, staying active and pushing herself to excel. Belinda wasn't just physically strong, she carried herself with purpose. She had goals and she chased them. But life didn't unfold in a straight line. After graduating from their local university, Belinda entered a marriage that didn't last long. The details of that relationship remain largely private, but what's clear is that Belinda chose not to let the end of it define her. Instead, she picked herself up and made a change. She moved to Katy, Texas, where her twin sister Brenda was attending Stephen F. Austin University. The two shared a small apartment and leaned on each other for support, just like they always had. It was there, at Stephen F. Austin, that Belinda met David Temple. If you're captivated by true crime stories and want to stay updated on the darkest cases, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We release in-depth crime documentaries just like this one, uncovering the chilling details behind real-life mysteries. Don't miss out, hit that subscribe button now. He was confident, driven, and athletic, traits that mirrored her own. Their relationship started like many college romances do. Friendly conversations, shared classes, growing interest. They were two people in the same phase of life, looking for something steady, something real. And from the outside, it seemed like they found it in each other. David Mark Temple was born and raised in Katy, Texas, a town where football wasn't just a game, it was a way of life. From an early age, David stood out on the field. As a linebacker for Katy High School, he earned a reputation for his aggressive playing style and leadership qualities. His performance on the field earned him a scholarship to Stephen F. Austin State University, where he continued to excel in football. At Stephen F. Austin, David pursued a degree in kinesiology, aligning with his passion for sports and physical education. It was during his time at the university that he met Belinda Lucas. Both were kinesiology majors, and their shared interests and ambitions brought them together. Their relationship developed over time, leading to a proposal on the university's football field, a place that held significant meaning for both of them. After graduating, David returned to the Houston area and began his career in education and coaching. He took a position at Alif Hastings High School, where he served as a teacher and football coach. His dedication to the sport and his students earned him respect within the school community. When David Temple and Belinda Lucas met at Stephen F. Austin State University, they were both studying kinesiology and both had firm ideas about their futures. Their connection was natural, two ambitious athletic students with a shared drive for structure, discipline, and success. Their relationship moved quickly. Friends and classmates noticed how fast things escalated, from casual interaction to serious commitment in what felt like a short amount of time. But to those closest to them, it wasn't entirely surprising. David was confident and decisive, and Belinda was loyal and determined. Once she gave someone her trust, she committed fully. Their personalities, however, weren't always a perfect match. Belinda had a strong will and didn't back down easily in disagreements. David, known for his commanding presence and competitive edge, wasn't the type to yield either. Some close to the couple observed moments of tension beneath the surface, early flashes of friction that could have been easy to miss or easy to dismiss as growing pains. Still, when David proposed on the football field where he'd spent so much of his time, the moment symbolized everything their relationship seemed to represent: shared goals, pride in their pasts, and a vision for a strong, united future. In 1992, David and Belinda got married. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple, young professionals with solid careers ahead of them, rooted in community and ready to build a life together. But those who looked a little closer sometimes noticed the cracks, small things, quiet things, things that wouldn't fully come into focus until much later. After their wedding in 1992, David and Belinda Temple settled in Katy, Texas, a community deeply rooted in tradition and pride, especially when it came to high school football. They purchased a home in a quiet neighborhood, aiming to build a stable life together. David began his career as a coach and teacher at Leaf Hastings High School, where he quickly earned a reputation for his dedication to the football program. His commitment to the sport and his students made him a respected figure in the school community. Belinda, meanwhile, took on a role as a special education teacher at Katy High School. Known for her warmth and enthusiasm, she formed strong connections with her students and colleagues, becoming a beloved member of the school staff. In 1996, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Evan. From the outside, the Temples appeared to be the picture of a successful, happy family, both parents working in education, raising their son in a supportive community. However, those close to Belinda began to notice signs of strain in the marriage. She confided in friends about her concerns, expressing feelings of isolation and unease. While she maintained a composed exterior, there were indications that all was not well behind closed doors. As time went on, the cracks in their relationship became more apparent. Belinda's friends observed changes in her demeanor, noting that she seemed increasingly anxious and withdrawn. Despite these concerns, she remained committed to her family and continued to fulfill her roles as a mother and teacher with dedication. By the fall of 1998, David Temple's life appeared stable. A respected high school football coach, a growing family, and a home in Katy, Texas. However, beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Heather Scott, a fellow teacher at Leaf Hastings High School, entered David's life during this period. Their professional relationship evolved into a personal one, and by late 1998, they were engaged in an affair. Heather later testified that she felt guilty about the relationship, knowing David was married with a child and another on the way. Despite her reservations, the affair continued, intensifying over time. David managed to keep the affair hidden from most, but Belinda began to suspect something was amiss. She noticed changes in David's behavior, increased absences, secretive phone calls, and a growing emotional distance. Friends recalled Belinda expressing concerns about her marriage, sensing that David was pulling away. In early January 1999, Heather confronted David, suggesting they end their relationship. However, just days later, David professed his love for her, and she reciprocated. This declaration occurred mere days before Belinda's tragic death. Around this time, another incident unfolded that would later draw attention. Belinda, who also served as a part-time basketball coach at Katy High School, had a confrontation with a student named Riley Joe Sanders III. The nature of their dispute was noted by colleagues, and while it seemed minor at the time, Riley would later become a person of interest in the investigation into Belinda's murder. January 11, 1999, began like any other Monday in Katy, Texas. Belinda Temple, 7 months pregnant with her second child, was preparing for her day. That morning, she received a call from her son's daycare informing her that her 3-year-old son, Evan, was feeling unwell. Belinda left work to pick up Evan and brought him home. She attempted to contact David multiple times between 11:55 a.m. and 12:11 p.m., but he did not answer. Eventually, David returned home around 12:35 p.m., allowing Belinda to go back to work. Later that afternoon, Belinda attended an after-school meeting which concluded around 3:30 p.m. She called David at 3:32 p.m. to inform him she was on her way home. On her way, she stopped briefly at her in-laws' house to pick up some soup and arrived home between 3:45 and 4 p.m. Around 4:30 p.m., neighbors reported hearing a loud noise, described as a bang or a gunshot. One neighbor thought it might have been a truck backfiring. Shortly after, a car was seen speeding through the neighborhood. At approximately 4:38 p.m., surveillance footage captured David and Evan leaving a grocery store. By 5:14 p.m., they were seen entering a Home Depot, although there is no footage of them leaving the store. Around 5:25 p.m., a neighbor saw David pull into his garage. Notably, Evan was not in a car seat, as David would later say he had dropped him at a friend's place after noticing the break-in. At 5:35 p.m., David knocked on a neighbor's door, stating he suspected a break-in and asked them to call 911. He claimed to have found the back door's glass pane shattered and the house in disarray. When police arrived at the Temple residence, they were met by the family's chow dog, Shaka, who was barking aggressively in the backyard. Officers were initially hesitant to enter due to the dog's behavior till David had to take it to the back. This raised questions. If an intruder had entered the home, how did they manage to bypass the protective dog without incident? Inside the house, officers observed signs of a possible burglary. The back door's glass was broken, but the pattern of the shattered glass suggested it had been broken from the inside. Items were scattered, but valuable possessions, including jewelry and electronics, remained untouched. Upstairs, in the master bedroom closet, officers discovered Belinda's body. She had been shot in the back of the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. The wound was fatal, and her unborn daughter, whom they planned to name Erin, did not survive. The scene indicated that Belinda had been kneeling when she was shot, and the closet's contents had been disturbed post-mortem. David informed the police that he had been out running errands with Evan during the time of the murder. He mentioned visiting a grocery store and Home Depot. Surveillance footage confirmed their presence at these locations during the afternoon. However, inconsistencies in David's timeline and behavior began to raise suspicions. The aggressive behavior of Shaka, but throughout the entire afternoon of the offense, no one in the neighborhood heard the Temple's dog barking, even though people were walking and moving along the street throughout the entire afternoon returning from work and school. No stranger could have reasonably gotten past the dog to commit a burglary of the Temple's residence. The undisturbed valuables all pointed away from a typical burglary. Additionally, David's demeanor and actions following the discovery of Belinda's body were scrutinized. As the investigation progressed, attention turned to David's personal life. It was revealed that he had been having an affair with Heather Scott, a colleague at Alif Hastings High School. This revelation provided a potential motive suggesting that David might have staged the burglary to cover up the murder. Despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, it would take several years before charges were filed. The community was left in shock, grappling with the brutal loss of a beloved teacher and the unsettling possibility that the crime had been committed by someone close to her. In the months following Belinda Temple's murder, life in Katy tried to return to normal. But behind closed doors, rumors swirled, and so did suspicions. David Temple continued teaching and coaching. By 2001, Just 2 years after Belinda's death, he married Heather Scott. The two relocated to a nearby suburb and started a new life together, raising him and Belinda's son and eventually having a child of their own. Officially, the case had gone cold. There were no arrests, no new public developments. But privately, the Temple case was far from forgotten. Behind the scenes, law enforcement and prosecutors quietly continued to gather evidence and revisit inconsistencies. They couldn't shake the feeling that something about the scene had been staged and that David Temple's timeline didn't quite add up. At the center of the push for justice was Belinda's family. Her parents, Tom and Carol Lucas, refused to let her memory fade into silence. They stayed in contact with investigators, asked tough questions, and made sure Belinda's name wasn't buried with the file. Year after year, they waited, hoping, pressing, determined to see justice served, no matter how long it took. And eventually their persistence would pay off. Nearly 6 years after Belinda Temple's murder, David Temple was arrested in November 2004 and charged with her death. The arrest came after a renewed investigation that uncovered new evidence, including gunshot residue on Temple's clothing and inconsistencies in his alibi. David Temple's first trial began in 2007. The prosecution, led by Kelly Siegler, argued that Temple had a motive to kill his wife due to his extramarital affair with Heather Scott and his desire to avoid the responsibilities of a growing family. This defense contended that the investigation was flawed and that the evidence was circumstantial. They rather suggested that the teenage boy, Riley Joe Sanders, who lived next door, might have committed the crime with a shotgun that perhaps belonged to his family. And since the boy had skipped school on that particular day with some of his friends, he could very likely have committed the murder. Also, that the police knew these boys and suspected them of committing burglaries and smoking marijuana. That Sanders had a motive. He disliked Belinda Temple for being a strict disciplinarian at school, where she was a teacher, and at home, where she complained about the boys leaving beer bottles lying around. Sanders had been previously investigated by the police, and he repeatedly failed polygraph exams, but the police had earlier cleared him as a suspect as his friends provided an alibi, and also he couldn't go through Shaka, the dog. After a month-long trial, the jury found David Temple guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. After many filings by his defense attorney in 2016, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned Temple's conviction, citing that the prosecution had withheld evidence that could have been favorable to the defense. This included information about alternative suspects and details that could have challenged the prosecution's timeline. Temple was released on bond pending a new trial. David Temple's retrial began in July 2019. The prosecution presented new evidence and witnesses, including testimony that challenged Temple's alibi and suggested he had time to commit the murder. The defense maintained that the evidence was still circumstantial and pointed to alternative suspects. After deliberating, the jury once again found David Temple guilty of murdering his wife. However, they could not reach a unanimous decision on his sentence, leading the judge to declare a mistrial in the sentencing phase. In April 2023, after a new jury was convened, David Temple was sentenced to life in prison for the second time. He will be eligible for parole after serving 30 years. More than 2 decades after Belinda Temple was found murdered in her bedroom closet, the man long suspected of killing her is now serving a life sentence. David Temple remains incarcerated, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He continues to maintain his innocence. Heather Scott, now Heather Temple, stayed by David's side for years. The two eventually divorced. Belinda's family, who had waited so long for justice, finally saw the man they believed was responsible held accountable in court, twice. After the 2023 sentencing, her brother Brian Lucas spoke on behalf of the family, saying Belinda and her unborn daughter Erin had not died in vain. He thanked the prosecutors and investigators who never gave up, and emphasized that the family could finally begin to grieve in peace. For many, the case exposed serious flaws in the justice system. delays, withheld evidence, and the emotional toll of starting over again and again. But it also revealed the power of persistence, the kind of persistence Belinda's family never let go of. In the end, the story of Belinda Temple is one of heartbreak, but also of unrelenting pursuit for answers, for truth, for justice. Sometimes justice takes time, and sometimes it comes too late for the people who needed it most. And if you're fascinated by true crime, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss an upload. We have more gripping stories coming soon, shedding light on cases that deserve to be told. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.